Great to be with you, and very honored to be leading this conversation with Kristy Drutman, who's doing some really important work. Kristy, for people who have not heard of the Green Jobs Board, how do you describe what it is, and then also talk a bit about how your own cultural identity really shaped the creation of this?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Kristy Drutman. I'm the co-CEO and founder of Green Jobs Board, and we are a company that is powering the global workforce for climate solutions. We're very passionate about figuring out ways to bridge the gap to bring more folks into climate career pathways, especially folks that come from marginalized communities who didn't see themselves in these positions or these career pathways to begin with. And so backing up in my journey, I identify as a Jewish and Filipino American, and my family is from the Philippines. And the Philippines is one of the most climate vulnerable risk countries in the world right now. And so for me, climate change wasn't something in the far off future, it's something impacting my people and my communities right now. And so I felt really compelled as a Filipino American to be able to tell these stories about climate solutions. And in that journey, I built a media company called Brown Girl Green, where I was able to tell brilliant stories around the world about climate solutions being driven by Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And through building that digital media platform, I realized something even bigger that was missing from that conversation were green jobs. And so I took to social media and my platform as an influencer and content creator online, and I started curating resources and meeting audiences, especially people who come from marginalized communities, where they were at, which is on social media, online, wanting to learn about opportunities and pathways to take action. And so Green Jobs Board started as a social media series on Instagram, and it blew up. It went viral. So many people realized that there needed to be more resources that were rooted in accessibility and inclusivity, where they could feel seen and heard in the conversation around climate careers. And companies and organizations realized that I was bringing something different to the table. I was reaching young people, especially young people of color, in ways that the climate movement had not before. And I was doing that through storytelling, stories of my own struggles as a young Filipino American woman and climate advocate who felt so passionate about taking action on these issues. But yet, when I graduated from UC Berkeley in one of the top environmental programs in the world, I didn't know how to get a job. I didn't know how to convert my climate activism into something that could be sustained long term. And there's so many people who share my story, so many people who don't come from intergenerational wealth, who can't afford to do things like unpaid internships, who maybe don't see themselves in the work, whether it be in the boardrooms or in leadership positions. And I realized that if we really want to shift the conversation and make things like a just transition possible, we have to create pathways for accessibility. And that's exactly why we decided to create Green Jobs Board. I just want to go over this really quickly. The climate industry is the largest growing field to address the climate crisis. The green economy is now valued at around $7.9 trillion, but yet we don't see clear bridges to bring folks who have the skills to the table in this industry, and employers don't know how to find that talent. And so we're bridging the gap. We currently reach around 200,000 job seekers on the internet in less than 2 years, especially people of color. More than 82% of our audience identifies as women, and we receive around 400,000 impressions every month of people who want to learn about building a green career, but just don't know how to get started. And for me, I'm so passionate about this because I feel like in a time like right now, in a country we live in today, green jobs and the discussion on how to build an inclusive green economy is not just a pipe dream, it's a tangible set of talking points and action items that we could be tapping into to bring in so many communities across political lines, socioeconomic backgrounds, who have felt historically excluded from this conversation and now could find an opportunity in an inn that feels appealing, that has co-benefits. It's not just about climate solutions, it's about livable wages. It's about building solutions for our communities that can actually create long-term sustained change through our jobs and the ways that we give back to our families.
Excellent. And Kristy, these are some really impressive statistics that you have up here. And so I don't want to feel like a wet blanket on this conversation, but I also want to acknowledge something that I think a lot of people are concerned about right now, with conversation in Washington, momentum about repealing significant portions of the Inflation Reduction Act, which was driving, construction projects, new jobs, like real growth, important growth in this area. What's your perspective on what that means for people that are, trying to take advantage of the jobs, and maybe there's fewer of them now?
Yeah, I would say that, even though we are seeing slowdowns on the federal level, we just heard our last brilliant speaker talk about the intense growth of even more pressure for cities and states to take action on this. And I don't see many states slowing down on this. Like, I was just in South Dakota, even a very red Republican state, in March, and I told them about Green Jobs Board, and they're like, yeah, like, we're still moving forward with building wind and solar, and that was in a red state. And so for me, I don't think we're slowing down anytime soon. And I think that if the federal government is not going to follow the trajectory of the world, then we need to keep pushing the momentum. And I think that the community that we're building, the conversations we're building, is going to keep that advocacy moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to get hung up on that big picture, the negative headlines, the negative news that come out of Washington. But when we think about what's happening in our states and in our cities, you found some really cool things happening, like at a hyper-local level, right?
Yeah, exactly. For us, we're really focused on being a community-driven jobs platform. So we're focused on thinking about organizations that are already doing incredible work, but that people maybe don't even know about. And so we're focused on building an accessible platform. And you guys can all check us out on greenjobsboard.us, where we're streamlining job processes. And we're not just being a job board. Like, yes, we're called Green Jobs Board, but we're even more than that. We're building a career ecosystem where employers that have been with us since the beginning want to be a part of a community-driven solution that's talking about, hey, we're not just going to list our jobs, we actually want to educate job seekers on how they could skill up. What are their tips and advice on navigating the green career pathways that exist, and how to, stand out as a candidate. And we're really wanting to build more of those moments. A key example of that is an event that we host every year at Climate Week New York City, which is our Green Jobs Pavilion, where we've been able to bring, tons of different companies, from Train Technologies to LinkedIn to other companies, to meet green job seekers where they're at, especially people who come from communities of color, and tell them, hey, you could get a job in regenerative agriculture and energy and efficiency and green construction, in sustainable fashion, in green sports. And we're able to build, curated events that teach people that the future of the workforce isn't just a gate-kept thing in the climate space. It can be appealing. It can be something that is irresistible, that more people can get and be a part of. And so we started off as, a job platform, but now we're building and changing the conversation around climate. And a lot of that is bringing local leaders. And Pavilion, we brought local leaders from the New York City area working on workforce development and connecting with talent in the area directly, to be able to bridge that gap in real time.
And thinking about workforce development, you were telling me something really interesting backstage about people who have had some challenges in their life and in Compton, California, and they discovered an entirely new career for themselves.
Yeah, so an example of us, building some of those curated spaces is we hosted an expungement clinic in Compton during Earth Month, during LA Climate Week, actually, where we felt it was important, especially after the LA wildfires, to talk about what is the role of green jobs for formerly incarcerated workers and folks that have been, disenfranchised from accessing the green economy. So we actually partnered with a local organization and worked with them to expunge the records of folks who attended. And at the beginning of that session, I asked everyone in the crowd, who here knows what a green job is? No one raised their hand. But we brought in U.S. Green Building Council, Grid Alternatives, and some other incredible green organizations. And by the end of the day, we asked everyone, who knows what a green job is? Everyone raised their hand, and everyone was like, I'm going to apply to one of these trainings. And for me, that felt so powerful, because it felt like this huge opportunity for us to be tapping in to communities that historically haven't seen the economic opportunities and the growth opportunities that the green economy can provide. And I think that's a shame when it comes to storytelling and being able to reach the mainstream media to shift the needle on these things. And I think that, what we're building at Green Jobs Board is shifting that conversation every day.
And those jobs are jobs that have impact, where people, you go home at the end of the day and you feel like, wow, I've made a difference. And you're also connecting people to those jobs, people who are typically of color, right?
Yes.
Of minorities in the United States. So what does it mean for them to be in that role and then to feel seen?
Yeah, I would say that like from people just following me on social media and following our journey as we've built this company, like I said, it was all a grassroots effort from people who look like me saying we need a resource like this, because they would go to these traditional platforms or these conferences and events and felt like there was no one that looked like them. They weren't being able to have the type of support they needed. And I get stories all the time from people who tell me, I got my first job through Green Jobs Board, or I got my second job because I got my first job on Green Jobs Board, or I didn't even see myself in this industry at all. But following your journey after, a year or 2 years, I decided to change my major or actually go back to school and study this. And it's because I was following you and I learned about these stories. And so for me, it's reaffirmed that storytelling is not just a nice to have. It actually can decide which communities get profiled, who gets resources, and how local solutions actually get funded and implemented on the ground. And I think talking about green jobs as a tangible way that we could be investing funds into marginalized communities to get them to feel seen as leaders who are innovative and solutions oriented is the way moving forward. And I think jobs and job creation is such a key part of that.
When you talk about what communities are getting funding, getting attention, getting support that they need, I mean, we're really talking about the history of redlining in this country, right? It is communities of color which are in the parts of a city that flood more easily. They're next to, dirty, noisy freeways and ports and airports and power plants. And so we, in that context, also talk about resilience, but I wonder if that's maybe not the right word that we should be thinking about in that context.
Yeah, I would say, growing up in Filipino culture, seeing Filipinos, when we deal with typhoons in the Philippines, there's a saying like, we always do it with a smile. Tragedy with a smile isn't like Filipino culture. And it's interesting because it's almost like we find humor in it. And there's a lot of memes that are crazy in our culture just to cope with the pain of our situation. But we always know how to find a silver lining. But I think that so many communities, especially here in America, where we're just expected as communities of color to just grin and bear it, or, oh, you're so resilient. But I think that if we're going to design an inclusive green economy, we can't just be designing one that's focused on resilience. It has to be designing one focused on abundance, creating spaces where community-driven solutions are at the center of what we're building and investing our time and energy into, by making sure that community leaders who are at the forefront of these solutions are supported, that they can actually have the infrastructure, the mentorship, and the support to be able to implement those solutions in meaningful ways. And so when I hear the word resilience, I think, we've been resilient. My ancestors have been resilient. I want to breathe. I want to rest. I want to rest in a world where I can actually thrive and go beyond survival to being able to build a thriving community for me and my loved ones.
And when you say breathe, you mean metaphorically? Sure. I mean, that certainly deserves a round of applause. When you say breathe, you mean metaphorically, but also literally. I mean, in terms of like cleaning up the air that we all breathe, cleaning up the water that's in our backyards. When people get a job through a Green Jobs Board, and I'm sure you hear from them again, what's the general theme of that conversation of like, I had no idea that this job even existed, and now I'm coming home every day feeling like this?
Yeah, so many people are like, I'm tired of just being in the mundane grind of the world that we live in today. I want a job with purpose. I want to build a career that feels like I'm having an impact. And even though the media might tell us that people don't care, there's so many people who care. They just don't know how to get on the path towards doing that. And so I feel a responsibility as someone who does have an incredible platform and is building, a tech tool and these curated event spaces to make sure that those people are in the room and feel supported in that. Because every time someone leaves and tells me, hey, I told 3 friends about Green Jobs Board, and I told them if you're on your job search and maybe you've never even considered a climate job, check this out, because you will find benefits in this. You'll find growth in this. You could change your life with this. And I've found so much joy and growth in my own life by being in a green career. And I just feel like if I can build that in myself, then I want to share that with other people and be the blueprint.
I think based on the applause and the cheers and certainly how I'm feeling, like just listening to you talk, I feel hopeful. But hope shouldn't just be a feeling. Hope has to be a verb that's backed up by something. So for people that are in the room, for people that are watching this and hearing from you, what is it that they need to do to make sure that that hope doesn't just last but grows?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, when it comes to Green Jobs Board and what we're building, it's been a journey where, as a woman of color entrepreneur, I don't come from intergenerational wealth. I don't come from connections. I have built everything I've built through relationships, through mentors, through people who believed in my vision to build an inclusive green economy. And so I look at the statistics. Less than 2% of women are being funded by venture capital as entrepreneurs who are building inclusive climate solutions. I am one of them. As a woman of color, those stats are even more dire. And so when I think about hope as a verb, I think about my own journey. And I think if you truly believe in creating a just transition, I would love to collaborate with you. I would love to build with you. I would love for folks in this room to think about investing directly into women of color entrepreneurs like myself who are building community-led innovative solutions directly that serve these gaps and are addressing things that actually speak with a cultural cognizance to reach communities that the climate movement historically has not. And I feel like if we are building those solutions and having that dialogue and investing in entrepreneurship and innovation, we are going to see local-led solutions that can sustain in the long term. So my call to action for everyone today is to scan this QR code, come chat with me if you believe in really making a just transition possible and finding and seeing the tool and the vision that we're trying to build, which is building, media, tools, and events that allows everyone to have a seat at the table and to feel that they are thriving while doing that. So feel free to chat with me about opportunities to work with us and to make this just transition a reality.
You already are. Thank you. Thank you, Kristy Drutman.
Thank you.